Miron, welcome to the No Strings Attached show. Listen, I'm so excited to host you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Bogdan. I know it's been tough to get this going, but I'm glad I could finally make it today.
Yeah, listen, me too, because I personally worked with a few of your players, and I'm very excited to talk to you a little bit more personal. I know we talked a little bit about, the players that you work with when I was going on tours, and we talked about their goals and, like how to accommodate their trip in the best possible way. But I'm really excited to just talk about Miron and what he thinks and what he values and what he prefers in terms of development. So not just me, but everybody else will get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, hopefully I can enlighten them a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So listen, I always start with people talking a little bit about their beginning in tennis, beginning in coaching. So maybe you can tell us a little bit how you started coaching.
Yeah, so actually I graduated from University of Utah on a scholarship, and when I came back home, I was kind of helping out Richard Hernandez at the Richmond Hill Country Club, just assisting him for a little bit. And I was thinking about trying to be a stockbroker at the time, and I started studying to be a stockbroker for like a month. And I spent like every day in the library, and I'm just like, I can't do this. This is not for me. So I went to Richard. I go, what do you think I should do? Like, I want to get into coaching. And at that time, I really wanted to get into college coaching, like down in the U.S. So Richard recommended I go down to Florida, and I worked for a guy named Steve Smith. Now he's under like a Great Base Tennis umbrella. So I served a 6-month internship down there for him. It was basically unpaid on my end. Steve just housed me, and I just worked there for free for 6 months. And I had a job lined up to go to University of Pepperdine as a volunteer assistant coach if visas and paperwork got approved. And long story short, the visa and paperwork didn't get approved, so I had to come back to Canada. And I just started working at the Richmond Hill Country Club. That was probably in like 2009 maybe. And I started working everything, not only with high performance at the time. I was doing everything. I was doing rec, I was doing weekend rec, I was doing high performance a little bit, just a little bit of everything. But I would say, like, my start was that 6-month internship where it was like, man, long days, like 7 a.m. till 10 p.m.
That's it.
No vacation, no, just grinding. But I think it kind of was the first thing that helped develop me as a coach, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Listen, it's the more I listen to other podcasts when people talk and coaches talk about their story, and the more I interview coaches, the more I hear like similar things, like what we're asking of our athletes basically is to sacrifice, and willingness to sacrifice certain things and being able to put in the work. And like through your story, I hear again your desire to completely neglect the payment for 6 months and just like, hey, listen, I don't care, I want to learn. Yeah, just can you please give me something that I can learn, the opportunity to learn. So, and then working again everything that you can, just so you can get as much experience as possible, whether it's like recreational, I can learn from them, whether it's adults, I can learn here as well. So it's very very humbling always to hear stories like this, that hey, learning opportunities are everywhere, and you can find them anywhere right now, which is like I find it is a little bit harder. So I'll rephrase, sorry. I find it that coaches these days are not doing that as much. Do you find that too?
Yeah, like I think coaches at a too young of an age are trying to be too picky on what they want, personally.
Yeah.
Where I think it's like, you take the best of any situation that you're given. And if you really want to be a good coach, I think it's all about the passion that you share and the information that you give the players, right? And, I think I look at coaches, it's like, to get to a level of, say, dealing with the best kids in Canada or international kids, there's a long way to go to get to that level, right? Yeah. And you have to put in the time. And, I think it's more about putting in the time with everyone you deal with, right? It's not just, I'm going to pick and choose who I want to work with. Obviously, as you progress in your career, you can maybe pick and choose a little bit more. But when you're starting up, it's like, whoever's in front of you, do the best job you can to help them improve. Whether it be a 6-year-old who's just getting started or a 50-year-old adult, as long as they're getting better and you're sharing your passion for tennis with them, I think that's the most important.
Yeah, 100%. Because better coaches are the ones who can improve anyone in front of them faster than somebody else, right? So that's why the best coaches work with the best players, because that's what they want and their values and their goals align. So I'm good at improving you fast. So you want to improve fast. Okay, let's work together, So it makes perfect sense. So let's talk a little bit more about you. Back to you again. Every time when I worked with your player, whether it was Nick Lagaev or it was Aiden Malik, I'm sure I'm missing somebody, there was certain brand to that player. Certain style of their behavior, certain values that followed that player. And it's no coincidence that, you were their coach. So can you please tell me, and to everybody who's listening, what are your values that you're trying to instill in your players?
Yeah. Think like discipline would be first and foremost. Just discipline for doing your job every day, discipline for getting a little bit better every day, discipline of hard work. But I think if I could think of one word, I would say discipline would be my number one thing. And then kind of going down from discipline, I would probably say hard work, like good focus, and good intensity. Those are probably like the core of what I'm looking for. And maybe respect. There's a lot of other things that can fall into that category, but I think, if someone is disciplined, then I think they'll be hardworking. I think they'll be focused. I think they'll bring great energy every day. I think they'll have respect for people and themselves and coaches and their surrounding players. So, and I think if people have been around me and seen me work, I think that would be the one thing that I would hope they would portray when I run a group or run a class. It's like, we're here to work and we're here to not waste time. And I would say I'm demanding. I'm strict. I think over the years, I've probably gotten less strict and kind of found the balance between, I think when I first started, I was probably like too strict maybe. And I never found the relationship balance between building a relationship with kids and having them kind of like you and getting to know you, but also knowing when to crack the whip and be tough on them. And that now, as I've gotten older and, I kind of think I've done a better job, at least of hopefully finding the balance where I'm tough, but I can also lighten up, make them laugh, make sure they have fun when they need to have fun too. Right. And I think that's right.
Yeah, that's good. I find that like a general progression of a coach, of a good coach. Like if you're really nuts when you're young, and then as you just mature, I guess, and develop other ways of communicating your message, you kind of understand, well, here I don't have to be tough. Like you choose your moments when, like you're saying, like you choose your moments to be like really tough. And I think that's your kids, your players appreciate it appreciate you more like this.
Yeah, I think like you also you don't want your players to walk around you like they're on eggshells, where they're like any little screw up they have, they're going to get yelled at for something. I don't know, where at least now it's like, you can come into my office and you can, I'd hope that it's an open door policy and you can come into my office and we can shoot the shit, because
that's right.
Not only when they're juniors, I want them to have a relationship with me when they're 25, 30, hopefully I get invited to their wedding or, different shit like that where
100%. 100%.
It's more of
that's
a
great.
life.
It's
life relationship.
How do you know? I 100% agree. How do you enforce that discipline? Because, okay, I'll say it right away. Like Richmond Hill program is known to be one of the toughest. At least that's what I hear. Sometimes like parents calling me or, like the general reputation is that it's pretty harsh, So I want to hear it from your end. Like, how do you enforce that?
Oh man, I would say what?
Where do we start?
I would say that the power of my voice is probably one.
Mm-hmm.
So to give you an example, like there could be days where I'm like, say I take a week off for a vacation or something, and then I come back and work for a day or two. Like I come home and I have no voice left because I'm just raising my voice, being intense, being loud, pushing people to run for an extra ball, pushing people to do different things. Right. So I think number one is power of the voice, especially at the beginning of practice. Like I like to make sure that they feel that intensity and that energy from me. And once they feel that intensity and energy from me, then they start, picking it up themselves a little bit, because everyone's going to feel crappy some days. So I try to bring it every day through my voice, and then just being, like I said, demanding, like if you don't want to try and you don't want to work hard, then just, there's no point in practicing today. Like, go home. I have no problem like kicking you out of practice if you don't want to give me what I think is best effort, right? So I think just being tough on that.
I think it's very important that we do that, but I find, how should I phrase it? Like, it's very important that parents are on board with that as well. Oh. You know what I mean? And it's very hard to find like people who are really committed to that and really buy into that philosophy, especially like, these days. That's what I find, at least. I mean, I have no problem kicking out parents as well, but I know just in the back of my mind, I know that some parents, and maybe that's, and again, maybe that's how that's maybe not a kid for your program. But some parents will not be okay with that, and you have to have a sit down. But of course, there is a limit of what the kid can do. Of course, if it goes over the limit, then see you later. But I'm just saying in general, like, parents are not overall, I think, prepared for that kind of stuff these days, for the most part.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I think, like,
because I'm sure you had conversations with parents who,
I would never do that with someone who I'm not comfortable doing it with first, right? Like, I would never say a kid who's, say, new to my program, been here for 3 months, I don't know the parents very well, I don't know the kid very well. Yeah. Before I threw him out of practice, I would make sure I had a conversation with the parents and the kid and kind of outline what I expect. And if they're not meeting my expectation, then at least I set the criteria up, right? But sometimes if I have a kid who I've known for like 6 years and I know the parents forever, I think they would give me the autonomy to say, yeah, you can do what you want with my kid. So I think every situation is different a little bit. And you have to know kind of who you're dealing with in that situation before you give them the boot, maybe.
No, you're right, 100%. But in general, if we talk about parents, just for a brief moment, do you think that parents have gotten softer over the years, like in relation to their kid?
Like, I would probably agree. I would probably say, yeah, they've gotten softer, but it's just not only our sport, I think just like society in general.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Like society in general has gotten a little bit softer, I would say that I try to feel like as a program, we've hopefully stayed the same, but like, I know, like if we're doing like, recreational camps, sometimes it's like if one kid gets a medal, sometimes we have to give all the kids a medal, that same that kind of soft culture of like, can't make people unhappy, don't want kids to cry or have their feelings hurt a little bit. So I would say that parenting has gotten a little softer, but I think it depends on the culture, right? Like, I think you have Eastern European parents who I don't think they're that much softer, right? Or you have, I think it's different. Every background of parents can kind of vary a little bit, and I think there's a fine line there.
Yeah, and I think that's why, kids in general, like, respond better to, like, when you have that balance of, like what we talked earlier, being strict, but also being, like, nice. You don't have to be like a douche, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be like very balanced in your communication, so to say. And I think that's the reality. Like, that you have to be aware of those changes because it affects our coaches if we want to adapt to the current state of things. I think it's very important.
100%.
So let's talk about Richmond Hill High Performance Program, because it's one of the best programs in Canada for sure, producing many good players. What's in your mind that makes that program so good?
It's taken, well, I think like over like the last like 30 or 35 years, it's come through undulations of having like good times, bad times, good times, bad times, you know. And I think like any program, it is cyclical a little bit. You know, any program goes through a little bit of ups and downs, and maybe right now we're in like an upward trend in terms of, but I think it kind of started where like, you know, 10, 15 years ago when I first started, you know, it was starting with the youth and starting with those young kids, right? Those 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. And, you know, now those kids are either in university or just graduate, going to university, or, you know, under 16, under 18 now, but they've been in, the core of those kids have been in our program for, say, like since they've been 8 or 9. And I think one of the important things for us is like making sure that kids get off to a good start. And I think a good start with like fundamentals, a good start with good technique, a good start with good values in terms of like hard work. So I think like the core of it is making sure that kids get off to a good start, and then it becomes easier down the road to help them get better. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why we've been so successful, is because like the kids that have started up in our program when they were like 7, 8, 9, generally, I hope they hit the ball pretty well. So I hope athletically they're pretty good. So it gives them the framework for when they get older to play like all court. Like we try to teach an all court game to all kids. You know, obviously every personality is different, but that's kind of what we strive for, an all court game. So trying to like teach them how to play the all court even when they're young. And learn how to play the net when they're 8. Even they're going to lose, but you're going to learn to play everywhere when you're young, and hopefully when you're 16 and you get a growth spurt, it's going to help you down the road. I don't know if I answered your question there, but
I mean, well, and we'll get. Listen, there's no one answer to that question. We're going to talk more about it, so you're not going to get away that easy from from that question. So, because I really want to know more, you know, it always fascinates me now being a leader of my own little high performance program that's growing as well, and I want to try to understand also by talking to, you know, coaches who've done it for many years, like what is it that brings success. You were saying like your program went through like ups and downs. How does it, like, what does it depend on in your mind?
Like, I think it just depends on like, at least from my experience, I think it depends on just like the amount of time you put into a specific group of players, right? Like, I'll just give you an example of our program right now. Like, our program right now is like, I would say really strong from like 14 and up. Like, and we put in a lot of time, like, you know, really dedicated time, effort to that group. And, you know, that group's now in under 16, under 18, they're slowly graduating. And I would say we kind of we didn't give enough time to maybe that group of like 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. And we don't have a big crop of those kids right now. There's just not a big crop in our club. So then it's like, okay, now we have a next gen group, say of under 10. And now we're trying to put in time with that group and try to grow that group. So I just think it's about just the dedication of time and how many bodies you have who can, you know, if you have a big staff and a lot of coaches who can do a good job, maybe that doesn't happen. But I would say we're not on the huge side of staff. You know, I have like 2 to 3 go-to people behind me, and then a couple people who are like helping out and trying to learn and trying to get better. So I think it's more just how much time we've dedicated to specific groups. Yeah, and then people come, right? When you have good players, you know. That's right. Not that I like that. I don't like that, to be honest. Like, I'm not the big fan of like leaving one place to come with better players. I hate that, to be honest. But that's just kind of how our business works.
Can you talk a little bit about why you don't like that?
I just like for me, I feel like you don't need better play. Like, it has nothing to do with who's on the other side of the net if you're going to be good. is like has nothing to do with anyone on the other side of the net. So it doesn't matter who's across the net. You can get the best out of that practice. That's one. And two, it's like loyalty. I think loyalty is so important. Like you have to give the coach. Is it better to have one coach for 10 years or is it better to have 4 coaches for 8 years? I think it's better to have one coach for 10 years. Generally, as long as you feel like that coach is doing their job, they want you to get better. They're passionate.
Of course, you're improving.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'd rather it's better to have the one coach rather than switching around. I can't like parents who bop and shop is, that's one of the first questions I ask parents is like, okay, where have you been? What clubs have you trained at? Why are you leaving?
That's right.
And I try to generally be courteous and follow up with a phone call to other coaches if they're. Especially if they've been in a program for a while or taking a lot of lessons with a private coach, I try to do some background work and being like, well, what's going on here? For sure.
Yeah. No, I think it's very important that the thing that you bring up, like it has nothing to do with who you're playing on the other side. It's all you, right? Like it comes from you. Like, are you, like if you, blame other kids for not getting better, there is an issue that you're avoiding, it's like
100%.
So it's very important. I have a story. Just I got told it like a long time ago. So there was a player from Israel, Dudi Sela. I don't know if you
I know. I remember him.
So he was playing, I believe in Vancouver. There was this challenger or something like at
it's the Odlum Brown Challenger.
Yes, that's right. So it's finals, right? So and everybody's gone. Like on final day, there's only you and your opponent. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nobody. You don't want to warm up with your opponent. So Dudi Sela comes to the club, and there is this like 70-year-old dentist, a member of the club, who's just hitting. And Dudi Sela, before the final, warms up with the 70-year-old member of the club, just very slow, very like, obviously not crushing the ball, very controlled, but so into his mind, imagining like his shots, like, and doing like his visualization work. And he goes in, and I don't know the result of this of the final, but I think that's kind of irrelevant. Like it just proves the point that listen, it's not about, it doesn't matter.
100%.
Really. Yeah,
I'll tell you a funny story too. Like for me, when I was in the middle of doing my Coach 2 course actually, and I signed up for a futures event, and because I went to go watch one of the futures down at York University, and I signed up because I'm like, these guys. I feel like when you start coaching, you start kind of getting a better feel for the level of tennis. So I was like, I was a decent player growing up. And then I kind of like graduated, watched tennis, was around some good players for a bit. And I'm like, these guys aren't that good, at a futures level. I was like, that's what I thought personally for me. So I'm like, okay, let me sign up for the futures the next week. So I signed up for a futures at Parkway. I qualified and I ended up playing first round, and I don't know anyone at this tournament. Like, I'm not traveling. I don't know anyone. So I'm asking people, hey, do you want to warm up? And everyone tells me they have a warm up. So I'm like, okay, well, I have no one to warm up with. So I just go to the wall and I just say, I literally hit balls on the wall for like 15, 20 minutes, hit serves by myself on a court for like 10 minutes. And that was my warm up for the match. And I think it's that same kind of theory is like, you can get the best out of anything. You don't need someone else.
That's it. Yeah. No, it's so important, like, to teach, to learn that, skill of adaptability. Like, no matter what, you find a way. It's important to learn it as a player, as a coach, and it's important to pass that skill to the players that we coach right now.
For sure.
Because it's, I find it these days that it's kids with the phones and with technologies, and with them also being like so organized by their parents. Everything is scheduled, everything is organized. Kids have zero problem solving during the week. And I see it on the court. Like, over the years, I feel like, I want to hear your take on it, but I feel like it's gotten worse in terms of kids like coming up with solution and adapting. Of course, it varies like kid by kid, but in general, the general trend is is not a good one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for sure, like, we're programmed out as a culture. Like, just, you know, you look at a kid's schedule, they have a schedule plan Monday to Friday. This time they're going there. Like, for sure they're programmed out. And I think, yeah, it does create, like, I'm a firm believer that you need supervised playtime and you also need unsupervised playtime. Like,
100%.
go live on the court and be a court rat and play with anyone and just play matches, like, with no one watching, right? And I think that's one of the big ways to learn is, like, just go play a match. And I remember when I was younger, I was just literally, I would live on the courts. Like, on the weekends, my parents would drop me off. And I think, you know, coming back, you know, one of the reasons why I feel like we've been successful as a program is because I've tried to instill that culture here, where it's like, you know, you're not just here Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday, right? They need to learn on their own. They need to play by themselves. And they need to form relationships by themselves, you know? Like, it's like, you know, you got to play on your own. You got to be here on the weekends. You got to do extra things rather than always being program. And I agree with you. You know, you see it when they compete, right? It's like they have there's no real solution to how to get better. It's just like they start whining and complaining and wondering what's wrong with them. It's like probably because everything's done for them too often, right?
It's true. It's very true, and it's very unfortunate. But again, like it's like you're saying, it's up to us to give them those tools and to show them the way. You know, like, hey, do that. Come to the club on Friday to serve, to play points, to play whatever touch games. I remember when I was like growing up, and when I was like in my regular trainings, it wasn't the same club system. It's just like wherever you could rent courts, so it wasn't possible to like have like free time, you know. Like, but whenever we travel and there was like a bunch of kids, we would always hang out playing mini tennis, touch games, some stupid like games that we would come up with, you know. It's just like that's what it was all about. Like, we would play soccer, we would play basketball, we would just like do everything that's whatever we could find, you know, possibly to. And coaches didn't care. They're like, whatever, go. And then, you know, coaches would hang out on their own, parents would hang out with coaches, and kids would just do whatever. And that was the best time. Like, it was like a summer camp for me, because I got to do stuff. We got in trouble, you know, we found a way to get out of trouble. So it's like, and it's unfortunately we're lacking that.
Yeah, I think kids have to be kids, right? It's like, go do stuff where no one's watching you, and go play mini tennis, go play doubles, go play stupid games, but, you know, play. And I think sometimes it's like they're always playing with someone watching them. You know, coaches.
It's true.
You know, and
That's right. Yeah, no, you're right. It's important. Are you enforcing certain schedules? Like, because obviously with your better players, even younger ones, like, are you like, hey, this is your schedule? You know, these are the hours.
Like training? You mean like week to week schedules in terms of how many hours they're training in a week?
Yeah.
I try not to enforce it on like a strict level, but I try to give them goals, right? So like for the younger kids, it's more about like attaining these generalized hours. Okay, so say a 10-year-old, I'm saying, okay, you're looking to play like 10 hours a week, for example.
Yeah.
For the kids who are a little bit older, I try to specify it a little more detailed, maybe like setting up practice matches, doing different stuff, you know, putting in a little extra time on your serve, being a little more specific as they get older.
Mm-hmm. What about the kid who overplays and you find out that he's or she's overplaying? Like, she's young, but you know, the parents want to put in a little bit extra work. Maybe they're a little bit behind.
Like,
you know,
when you say overplaying, like, give me an example.
Like they're okay. So like I'm saying this because I know some players. There's quite a few players in general, not from your program, but I know a couple from my program. Like in general, in Ontario, in Canada, some players don't have a day off. You know, they have 0 day off, and they just like because parents might think, oh, you know, we're behind, or what else can we do for our daughter, for our son? So they put in more hours. They create those matches opportunities. They schedule lessons. They do this. They do that. So if the player has
Okay.
no day off, for example,
I think
or plays like 4 hours in a row, 5 hours in a row,
no.
if they're like 10,
Like I think
if they're like
that's
10 or
off the top of my head right now in our program. I don't think we have that player. But I think it's like that balance, right? Because you need those parents that are going to be a little crazy, who are going to like want to like make sure they're playing a lot and make sure they're engaged and make sure they're getting the hours. But it's also about educating the parents too and telling them like, listen, like they're going to burn out. They're, you know, I've seen so many kids who have. I find that you find this a lot with kids, right? If you ask a kid to take a day off, I don't know what your experience is. You go to say a 12-year-old kid who doesn't like taking days off, and you ask them to take a day off, and they say, generally to me, they say, I hate taking days off. I come back the next day and I feel so rusty. That's their like number one thing. So they're like, I'm not going to take a day off because I feel rusty. Yeah. And I think it's like they have to learn that that's normal, and they have to learn to do it. And I find especially when they're younger, right? They're just like kids just hate taking days off for some reason.
Yeah. They like playing. I mean, they're, you know, if you organize your practices right for that age group, they just want to be on court.
Yeah.
Like it's natural because it's a game, right? It's a game we're teaching, so they want to play more. It's normal.
Yeah, and then they come back the day they take a day off, and they might lose in some stupid game that they're playing on, like an up and down drill for a little bit, and they're like, "That's why I don't take a day off." Right? It's like, it doesn't matter, man. No one's gonna remember what happens on like Wednesday, March 1st in like 3 years from now. So I think it's like, they do, some kids overplay, but I think it's also about like educating the parents a little bit, and educating the kids too, right? There's a balance between, but you're always going to have parents who are, I don't know, I've seen some parents who are just.
But I think you have to be a little bit crazy.
Agreed, 100%.
Like crazy in a sense that you have this like desire to get your child to the like absolute best level, and you're just like, I think that comes from like just not knowing exactly what you should do, so they just start doing like this and that, and let's do this and that, you know. So, and some, you know, are very good to work with the coach and kind of being guided as to like, okay, let's have that energy. That's great. You're committed. To me, that's a sign of commitment and dedication. So you have that. Now let's, you know, make sure that we channel our energy here, but some don't want it, and that's fine too. But I find it.
I agree. I think like you need crazy parents. They have to be a little crazy. Like if parents aren't crazy, then you know, kids might be too soft. They're not playing enough. I'd much rather have a parent who's a little on the nuts side than a parent who's too nice, right? I'd much rather and educate that crazy parent just about the long-term journey, right?
Yeah. 100%. Miron, I wanna talk to you a little bit about your older program, like your 14 plus. What's the environment like in that program?
You know, when you talk about environment, what do you mean? Just like how it's structured, or?
Let's talk about structure first.
Well, so generally, the structure of it is we have 5 courts, and the nice thing about the program is there's 5 courts, and the 5 courts are glassed up. So no parents can actually sit on the court. You can observe from the up top area, but you know, as a coach, you can say and scream and do whatever you want, really, and you have kind of close to complete autonomy to. You know, it's not like I have members playing beside me. I need to watch what I say. You know, I have 5 courts. No one's beside me. It's kind of like our own little sacred place.
It's the best.
Yeah, it's the best, right? So it's like, you can do what you want. So that's kind of the structure. Generally, we have anywhere between like 16 and 20 kids on those 5 courts. And kind of my general philosophies is they usually come for 2 hours, and I do little micro groups like in the daytime for kids who are in high performance. So I do like smaller groups with like groups of like 3 or 4 kids earlier in the day. But the big group is
like your early afternoon, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, like I'll do like an afternoon group from like 1 to 2:30, and then those kids would take an hour break and then practice again from like 3:30 to 5:30, and then they'll do fitness from 5:30 to 6:30. That would be like those kids who are like in the high performance programs who have more time, so they try to get like hopefully a double practice in. But and then,
do you do any early morning practice? I spoke to Mike Hall like at Ace. Remember, like they used to run like 6:30 a.m. Probably still are. But do you guys that kind of stuff?
I don't do any early morning practices at my club. I live far. Like I live down by the beaches, and for me to come to work early and do morning practice and then be here all day, it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough.
I think we have kids, to be honest. Like there's some dedicated kids in our program who are doing like early morning practices at least like 3 times a week. Okay. So like someone like Malik,
I was gonna say Aiden for sure is one of those players.
Yeah, and there's others.
Aiden is amazing.
Yeah, and
he's amazing.
So like someone like him, and I think there's a group of about like 4 to 6 boys who put in time in the morning before school. Like I would say 3 times a week. And I try to give them a structure of something to work on a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they come, they practice, and some of them and then they go to school, they come back later. Mm-hmm. But not at our club, no early morning practices. So it's usually Monday to Thursday training, like organized training Monday to Thursday. And then Friday, hopefully tournaments. These days it's tough, but hopefully tournaments or, a lot of practice matches, different stuff like that.
Is that organized match play, or it's just like you guys organize your?
We have organized match play too, but it's not like not like every week there's going to be a match play on a Friday that's organized. So like I've as a club we've subscribed as a UTR subscriber where we could host like inter-club matches that actually count towards your UTR. So
is that the Flex League?
No, it's not the Flex League. It's basically as a club. You have to pay a fee, but as a club, you can pay a fee where you can host UTR events. Now you can host them for other players, or you can just host them as inter-club matches for your club. So
so even like your friendly inter-club match can count towards
exactly. UTR. So like for me, I found like for that group, one it's a challenge, especially during specific times of year. It's a challenge getting a lot of good matches, like competitive matches that actually mean something. Outside of traveling and going to play ITFs and different events like that. So like for me, I was like, well, I got to find a way to make practice matches feel like they have a little bit more pressure. And, I think if you have a UTR match, it actually counts towards their number. Maybe it creates a little bit of pressure and, at least the practice match feels a little bit more like a tournament. And that was kind of my goal behind it. So we do those occasionally, maybe once a month. The shitty part about it is, since I've done it, some kids don't play it because they're so worried about their stupid UTR number. It's like, it's like, oh, if I lose to this guy, my number is going to go down. I'm like, oh my God, you guys.
And kids are usually like that, they're like, oh, he's 0.5 UTR higher. Oh my God.
Yeah, I had a boy play another boy. One boy's like a 9.5, the other boy's like a 9.2. And they was like, oh, I don't want to play this guy. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're going to play him in a tournament like next week maybe.
That's right.
And you have no choice in a tournament. So it's like, oh, that comes back to like that soft culture a little bit, right? It's like,
that's
worried about what, a stupid number really?
Yeah, but it's for us to really guide them and say, and not just them, parents as well, because they start to worry as well. Especially like I find when the closer the kid gets to getting when the question becomes like which school do we go to, like university, kind of UTR matters a little bit. So that's when they kind of like start being a little bit more protective, and like I had experience when parents would like tell. Like they were very worried about UTR. Like I could feel like, and obviously their worries transfer to, the child's worries. So it's like, okay, guys, it's like let's relax a little bit. It's like whether like you're either a good player or you're not a good player, So like whether you're like 0.5 here, 0.5 there, it's like it's not gonna be like a life changing for you. Let's put it this way.
100%. Like, and I think it's also like I agree. Like, you get to university, you call a college coach. It's the first thing they ask. Like, what's this kid's UTR? So I get it. I get it. There is value behind it. There is value in trying to improve your number. But I actually heard a cool story for someone who explained this to me. He said he was talking to a group of kids and he was talking about the UTR. And he's like, just think of yourself in 4 categories in a UTR. So you have a UTR for your mental, you have a UTR for your tactical, you have your UTR for your technical, and you have your UTR for your physical. And he's basically like, now rate yourself. So say you're a 10 UTR total. What are you mental? Maybe a mental you're an 8. Maybe physical you're an 11. Maybe technical you're a 9. And then it's like, look at yourself as a player and say, well, what do I need to improve? And what category do I need to put the most time in to improve my total UTR, right? And I think a lot of times kids are just looking at it as a number. But rather than looking at it as a number, look at it as like, this is where you are. And what do I need to do to get better? And then just go to work, and just get better and not worry so much about the number, because if you're getting better, the number's just going to go up.
Yeah. That's a really cool way of looking at it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
I never thought about it like this, but it brings a whole different perspective to this number, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's cool. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So as we go into dividing our player ability into like 4 different categories, can you talk a little bit about how do you structure your training sessions? Like your training sessions are more, because again, parents ask me this kind of question, so I'm really curious about how you are doing it. Like, how are you structuring your practices? Is it more point based? Is it like most of the time? Of course, there's time when you feed. Of course, there's time when you do that. Of course.
So are you talking about that like 14 and over group, like that older group, or okay.
Yes, the older.
Yeah,
group.
so the older group, generally the structure of practice, I usually like to start every practice with like some form of drill that's going to bring intensity right away. Like for me, I hate starting practices with just like mini tennis rallying. So like usually every practice I try to start with like some player maybe starting with volleys and some players warming up ground strokes and vice versa, rather than just start it off with just like mini tennis rally. Like rarely will you see us start a practice like that. Then generally we'll try to do like some form of good volume training with some form of intensity. So like say like start off with intensity for like 10-15 minutes. It's volume intensity. Expand it where it might be some form of volume training with like a little bit of a tactical focus. And I'd say like maybe 45 minutes we spend on like skill development through volume training. Then maybe 15-20 minutes we'll open it up to maybe some form of like, whether it be like offense, defense drills. Like I'm a big believer in creating situations where one player plays offense, one player plays defense. Like I'm a big believer in that. So like most of the point play drills that we set up are trying to create that situation where one player has to start the point off offense, the other player has to start the point off defense and play it out through that sequence. Because in tennis, I feel like that happens a lot, right? It's a lot of times it's like one player's playing that. And then we'll go into more point play for maybe the last 45 minutes or so. Serve points, different variations of serve points, but that would be like an overall generalized structure. It does change from week to week. Some weeks, if there's a lot of tournaments coming up, maybe we try to play more serve points, more different variations of match play with like set scorings. But skill development, offense, defense drills, and then point play.
So your offense and defense, you're a big believer in that. That's kind of your like part of your coaching DNA, so to speak. Like that's your thing. You spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, like I would say, we try to teach everyone to play an all court game, right? So if we're telling everyone to play an all court game, then like we're working on stuff and doing drills that are designed to try to encourage you to play an all court game, even if it's obviously maybe men or boys play a little bit more all court than girls, but I think you're starting to see it a little bit more where like the women are starting to be more aggressive and taking swing volleys and being comfortable playing well inside the court. So even if there's girls, it's about like encouraging them to take swing volleys and doing different stuff.
That's right.
To push themselves maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone, right? Because when you watch kids practice on their own, they very rarely do stuff like that. Like I watch so many kids practice. What do? They rally straight ahead, hit cross courts the other way, which is good and you need it. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of other stuff that you need to.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's also teaches kids to, fight till the end and realize that, hey, like I was on defense, but I'm winning some points, because I put extra ball in, and my opponent is missing that easy volley, so it gives them more belief to fight for every ball, and it just like if you encourage that, so it goes a lot more than just working your defense skill, it's more psychological as well.
Yeah, it's mental.
So
for sure.
That's good. That's good to hear that. I was talking to Chris from Blackmore a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that he's a big fan of this drill where he gives the most easiest ball possible to one side, and then just like you have to play, and one side that's attacking that has that easy like volley sitter or like like almost like an overhead on top of the net type of stuff that they have to win 10 points before the other side has to win 5 points. And I've done this drill like at my group since we talked to them, and it's been a blast. Like kids love it because sometimes you will miss those easy shots, like, and how often do we practice that? So when you brought up like attack defense, it's immediately my mind went to that.
Yeah,
to that drill
that's a good drill. Yeah, like sometimes we do stuff like that, like feed a sitter, hit a forehand wherever you want, play right.
That's right. It's fun.
But the problem I find with those drills, like nothing drives me more nuts in practice when I see like a kid who has like say a sitter volley on top of the net, a forehand sitter on top of the net, and they miss it, and they laugh. And they think it's funny.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And they think it's funny. And then if they do that in a tournament, they might have like a total mental conniption. So I think it's like they have to understand like and connect the dots sometimes where it's like you miss that matters. You might miss that on match point. I was watching selections last week, a couple weeks ago. It was a pretty good girls match, and the one girl had match point. She was up, I think, 6-5 in the third. Had her sitter forehand on top of the net, was playing against a girl I coach. Literally, Bogdan on top of the net, sitter, misses it wide, and ends up losing the match. And it's like, in practice, it's like when you miss those shots, like I find it doesn't bug kids enough. It bugs me a lot.
Yeah,
it bugs me so much when I see that. Like I get so upset at that, But I find that when kids miss that, I was like, no, man, how does that not piss you off? Like, you're going to get so pissed off if that happened in a tournament. So I think it's about ensuring that they care about it, It matters.
Yeah. Having intention and having the right attitude for every single shot. Like, because that's like, I hate calling it like easy shot because like you still have to spend same amount of effort, same amount of energy into that shot. It's not like, yes, it's, like again, like I don't like sometimes I say it easy, like it's an easy shot, but it's not an easy shot. Like you have to still, commit to it mentally, commit to it with footwork. Yeah, like show the proper respect to that ball. Otherwise, that's what's gonna happen. And sometimes it cost you matches, like you say.
100%.
So yeah. Miron, I have some questions from parents. That I've collected from my Instagram page, knowing that I will be interviewing you. So we'll start with number one. Why is Canadian tennis school is not so successful as in Europe or in US?
Canadian tennis schools?
Canadian tennis school, like as in like Canadian tennis, you can say.
Like in general of Canadian tennis.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Like, I think, well, if you look at how we're doing at a high level, we probably are pretty successful based on the players that we've developed over the last, 10 years. So I think it's hard to say we aren't successful, but I think it's always going to be hard to compete with a country like the U.S., right? Because the U.S. has 330 or 350 million people, and we have 30 million people. So if you think about us as a country, we're like the equivalent to like the state of Texas, maybe, or like the state of Florida. So like when you go to a tournament in Florida, and you go to those, say a provincial tournament in Florida, it's probably like close to the level maybe a national tournament, because that's the size of the population that you're dealing with. But in the grand scheme of thing, as a country, I think we've done an amazing job with what we have, and I think Tennis Canada has to be paid a lot of credit, because I look at it when I was growing up, like I was, as a junior, I was probably maybe top 5 in Canada. Dancevic was always number 1. So Dancevic was the best, and then it was like a couple of us underneath Dancevic. But we received nothing growing up at that time. Yeah. There were no national camps. There were no travel opportunities. And I think one of the big reasons why I feel like as a country we've done better is just giving kids the exposure and letting them see what's out there. And then like it creates that little bit of belief where I think, I look at myself, I lacked maybe that self-belief, but I feel like now there's that belief from kids. So they see Dennis, they see Milos, they see Bianca, they see Layla, they see Rebecca Marino coming back, they see all these players and then they've also gotten this exposure when they were like 12, 13, 14, where they see these kids who they played tournaments with who are making it. And it just creates this mental belief. I think it's so important, belief, like just believing that they can make it. So I think we've done a good job as a country, not a bad job, to be honest.
No, 100%. Like I agree as well. Like to answer that question from my end a little bit, too. I think obviously winning Davis Cup.
I forgot that.
Developing so many players in top 100 in recent years. We have some new generation coming up. It's hard, like you're saying, to compete, especially with the US, because also of the Grand Slam, right? That makes you almost $1 billion.
Yeah,
it's like it's quite a bit of money, that you can spend on player development plus other tournaments they have. So definitely, it's.
I also think from Europe and the US, there's just so much more competitive opportunity.
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
It's like a big, for our kids, maybe when they get to the age of 15, the really good ones, they've probably outgrown their home environment and they need to travel a lot and, get out a lot. If you look at say someone like Ben Shelton, right? They said that when he went to the Australian Open this year, that was the first time he ever left the US.
That's
so it's that would basically be impossible here because you need to go out and get good competition. So I think looking at Europe, looking at US, I think that's a big factor, just competition and lots of it.
Yeah, I think if I have to again throw my 5 cents into it as well, in terms of Europe and US, I think it's weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe weather, warmer weather in general, and also, like you said, competitive structure.
Yeah, I agree.
That's pretty much about it.
I think the nice thing about Europe is they get that balance between training on the clay and the red dirt, and then also going to these super fast carpet indoor. So I think it comes back to my philosophy on offense defense a little bit, right? They learn to grind, build points, develop, but then they also learn to be able to play close to the baseline, play fast. I think that's an amazing environment, right? Where they get the balance too.
Yeah. And then Europe, that's what I noticed too, especially summer days, when they go to a summer club or to their academy, there's always courts available that they can fool around a little bit, play those touch games and do that. They go against the wall. There's wall near the club, right?
Yeah.
So it allows them to spend more time on the court.
Yeah,
It's very hard to get court time for kids these days.
Indoors, for sure, it's so tough.
Yeah, indoors 100%.
So
It's so hard.
Yeah, it's so hard.
It's becoming almost to the point where we have to, in general, as a community, say, whoa, maybe we need to, find a better way to allocate time and give the time to our juniors, because in hockey, it's reversed. They prioritize juniors.
Yeah.
Right. It's so again, as a leading nation in ice hockey, we need to maybe kind of look at their structure, how they're prioritizing junior development, and maybe we need to
we got to
copy that a little bit.
I think Tennis Canada has the right idea in terms of this covering courts initiative, but we look at clubs that have closed over the last 7 years to clubs that have opened. More clubs have closed than opened, so we've lost courts.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
You had Timberlane, which was a really nice club. You had a club called Glendale, which was had some indoor courts. You remember you had that club on Rutherford that Ace owned for a little bit. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah. Wow.
At least in kind of our area, in the area that I'm in, I feel like more clubs, we've lost more courts rather than gained more courts, I think. So it's tough. Tennis is expensive.
It is tough. And it's expensive, and in terms of tournaments also, right? There's no tournaments right now.
Not enough.
There's not enough, and it's an issue. I'll be talking to Kardik. I reached out to him for a similar format interview. We should organize something within like a week or two. But it's an issue. Like it's a big issue, and not just in Ontario. Like in BC, I was talking to Mike Hall. Same thing. He says like if the kid is not, registering like on the dot, like the time of the registration when it goes open, like you're out of the tournament. Like you're not, like, it's like, what is this?
I think it's really tough with especially that younger group that's trying to get introduced to tennis, right? Those kids who don't have that ranking yet, who aren't going to get to play selections and provincials. Like, it's more those kids who are trying to get introduced to the game that they're not getting enough just competition, right? Go play tournaments. It's so hard. I know my club, we have a nice facility, and I would love to host tournaments, but unfortunately, the mandate of upper management says, we have to put members first, and it's shitty.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I understand. Like, it's hard as a business. I mean, you prioritize that, but if you come from our background, it's like, well, kids are members too. First of all, I know they're the second of all. If we're not providing them really with those opportunities, it's soon enough we're not going to have same level of programming.
I've thought about it. This was kind of one of the reasons why I got this UTR thing, is because I think it's going to have to come to the point where, like, maybe it's not always a tournament. Maybe it is like, you bring your 10-year-olds to my club, and I bring my 10-year, like, do like a little bit of like a team competition, home and away, where it counts towards the UTR, for example. And I think that's I think we're going to have to think outside the box a little bit, because I feel like courts are tough, and I feel like, could I bring in a full tournament of a bunch of kids who I don't know? No, but could I host 8 kids, 10 kids in a one-off team event? For sure I could, right? And I think we're going to have to think outside the box to do different events like that, like inter-club matches, stuff like that.
I agree. I think it's a good idea, because always tough situations like this, they create opportunities, that create interesting ways to solve problems. So I think that's actually a really good idea. I remember Peter Cameron was telling me a couple of years ago that, hey, like, maybe let's do that. Like, you send me some kids and I send you some kids, and I think maybe that's something for us to talk in the future. Yeah,
I talked to Al about it a little bit to do with the older kids, but it just never worked out. But I think it's more important, to be honest, with that younger group of kids, right?
With the younger, exactly, like your 10 and under, U12.
100%. I think it's more important with that group to set up something like that.
All right. Well, we'll stay in touch. Maybe we organize.
Let's do it.
Second question, Miron. How's your U1012 program in Richmond Hill Country Club is different from other most successful programs, for example, Spain or US?
I would say in that U10 and U12 program, I would say we really, really, really focus a lot on fundamentals. So, like, if someone were to come out and watch it, I think we try to start every practice with, like, some form of, like, shadow swinging routine. So, like, some kids will come and they'll shadow. We might make them shadow swing for, like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And then we might do stuff where we, feed a lot of balls, where they have to hit on balance and have good shape of swings. So I think first and foremost, we focus a lot on fundamentals, and it's not necessarily like we don't necessarily play as many maybe games as maybe, I don't know, Spain. I don't know. I've never been to Spain, to be honest, where I can say this is what Spain does. But I would say, I would say we're probably a little less game based than other clubs. I think we're a little more like fundamental based first, and then maybe as the kids get better, we start opening it up a little bit to be more game based and playing more points as they develop a good skill set and a good fundamental base to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 3. Not having many champions from Canada. Is this a lack of coaching, students' dedication, parents, money, facility?
Man, these negative people here, huh? Like, geez, they're ripping on Canada. I think we're doing amazing from where we were, you know.
Yeah.
From where we were 15 years ago to where we are today is, you know, no one 15 years ago would have predicted we would be where we are today. Like, I remember when I first started coaching in Canada, I was in the mentorship program for Tennis Canada, and I helped out at the national camp at Granite Club. And the first one I helped out at, I think Bianca was like 8 at the time or 9. She was young. She was there, but she was the worst girl. But I remember I said, I can't remember who I said something to, but I'm like, this girl's really good. Because even she was the worst girl there. But I remember at that time I said to one coach, I'm like, this, because technically at that time she was like smooth, clean. Yeah. She made a lot of mistakes and stuff. I was like, this girl's good. But at that camp there was like Tabilo, Dennis, Felix,
who's playing for Chile.
Yeah, Tabilo, Dennis, Felix, Galarno, Ben Seguin. Like you look at where that and I think that was kind of the start of investing in the national center and investing, and that was like one of the first regroupings. So I think, you know, you start with that, and it's created a little bit of like, you know, building blocks to grow and grow and grow. So I think, you know, we've done good for a small country. If you look,
I think so too. Like considering again where tennis stands in terms of you know, the sports that kids want to participate in. Considering our numbers in general of population, I think we've done really, really good. And considering the number of kids we're sending to colleges yearly, you know, like it's not just, you know, we're winning on a, you know, world stage. We're sending kids to US for the best education possible. And Tennis Canada has done unbelievable job, I think, in creating, especially with Louis Borfiga in charge, and when he's like, he completely redefined, he had a vision, and he created like the development structure that helped propel all those, well, not all those, but some of those players, let's say, to the top.
I think it's created a belief.
100%.
I think it created that belief, you know, too. It's like one player does it, then you can do it, you know. And
that's right.
I think if we look at it at long term, I'm not a big believer in like saying we need top 100 players. Like if you look, it's like, I think it's like, why don't we just, if we have a way more top 200-300 players, then those guys are going to break through, right? And I think, you know, if you look at us compared to the U.S. or say maybe some European countries, maybe that's where we lack, right? We don't have the depth of players. We have the high-end talent, but we lack that, those depth of players who are just going to like persevere and like want to travel and want to be out on the tour and grind.
Yeah,
I think that's something that maybe as a society and as a country we can do better, where we keep the dream going for those guys who want to keep the dream going, you know, who want to keep traveling and grinding and journeying.
Yeah, it gets tough with, you know, this is where we're at a danger of getting into a completely different conversation, but it gets tough because like how many kids are helped by Tennis Canada at U12? And I'm not saying like they're bad for doing that, but in general, there is, let's put it this way, there is a limit on how many kids can Federation help. Right, and especially again, being small country, being like having only one big tournament that they get money from. Like how many kids can we help at U12? Then the question is, how many kids can we help at U14, at U16, when the expenses are getting a little bit more, you know, bigger with the traveling and everything, and then how many at U18? So every single generation, every single like age group, you're losing some players. that you can really help. And then, at U18, you have only like 5, maybe 6 players.
Yeah.
How many out of them? So it's like, I don't know. That's just kind of my take on it. But of course, like that should be the goal, to get to that 18 age group with 10, 15 players that are willing to go after it.
Yeah, but I think it's also like, why do we forget about them when they're 18?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're 18 and they go to the US and they're good college players, for example. And maybe, I think we can try to find ways to keep them in the pipeline a little bit. And
100%.
I had a boy, he worked for me last summer. You remember Alvin, right? Tudorica?
Yeah, of course.
So Alvin,
yes. I traveled with him multiple times.
Alvin's the guy's a great kid, hard worker, court rat, literally loves to just hit balls. And he's a good player, and now he's like ITA national ranked. And, I'm telling him last summer, I'm like, dude, you got to give yourself a chance. You got to go play on the tour and, travel. And I feel like someone like that, and not only him, maybe not like the Drexels, but someone who maybe have a little bit lower profile than Liam, but they still, we want to keep them striving to play more and keep them
100%.
Dreaming to play more, because down the road, maybe they'll be better coaches because of it. Who knows, maybe they'll have experience to be better coaches. They can share wisdom. So I think it's not only about becoming better players, but they could help them stay in tennis and want to be coaches down the road. So I think
stay in the system. Exactly. Coming back, work for federation, go to the academies, open up their own academies.
Exactly. I think it's important.
100%. Maybe work in the office to think about the structure. You never know.
Exactly.
That's a good point. Question number 4. Does club rules in general in Toronto hold your programs to be more successful?
I would speak for my club. If there was one thing that I would love to change in my club, it would just be the ability to host tournaments.
Yeah.
So if I could say one thing that, I have a lot of autonomy to do kind of what I want in terms of taking courts and structuring program. I've gotten the go ahead to do, as long as, we're hitting some form of revenue that needs to be met. But I think if I could say a negative, and if there's one thing that I would change, it would be just having the ability to host tournaments as much as possible.
Okay. Question number 5. In your opinion, where is the best U12, U14 program in Ontario and in Canada?
There's no right answer in that question. Everyone, listen, every program's going to go through ups and downs. That's just the way that's just the way the tennis business in our country works. For me, I don't think you need to look at where the best program is. I think you have to find a coach who you trust, who's going to put time in, who's going to be passionate, and stay the course. I don't believe in going and chasing the best program. Like we talked about. It doesn't matter. Who cares if, it doesn't matter who's the best program. It matters, is this the best program for your kid, and are you going to be loyal to that coach?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I always bring that example. I spoke with Chris about it as well on our very first episode of this show, where parents are asking well, who's in your program? What kids are in your program? Who's in your program? I'm in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's isn't that the reason you want to come to a program? Because of the coach? Because of what you're gonna learn? Because of his values? Because of his experience, because of his way of coaching and things like this. So it's I
hate that question.
Yeah, I know. It's who's in your program? It's I always answer, I'm in the program.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. Come watch me teach and then we'll talk.
Exactly. And it's true. And again, I'm a big proponent, what you were saying too. Your kid can play with an 8-year-old on orange court and improve.
100%.
Really. Really, so it's about your mindset. It's about your, anyway, we're kind of going a little bit in circles, but
I think I think it's also important to create that culture, right? Where the older kids have to give back too. Right. 100%. I think, I look at it last night. So last night, I'll give you an example. I had a group of 20 kids and in between the age of 13 and 18 doing practice from 3:30 to 5:30. Then I had a younger kid group of under 9s, who are like, we call them high performance, but they're just getting into high performance. You know, they're a long way from the journey. And for like 10, 15 minutes, I had the older kids work with the younger kids. And I'm like, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to teach them a little bit. You're going to help them a little bit. And just kind of creating that culture where, you know, they're not so self-centered. You know, they're giving back to the program. They're, you know, I like it when the older kid knows the 8-year-old's name, for example, because it creates that little bit of like a family environment. Yeah, I think it's important.
That's great. That's great for sure. Mixing players with different levels and goals in one group, is this advantage or disadvantage for the players with higher goals? It kind of goes like to what we already discussed.
I think you can find an advantage in anything. Like, you know, like you could create so many environments for the better player to play someone who's worse than them and make it challenging and work on different skills that help. Like, you know, I think it's all about being creative as a coach to make sure that both players get a lot out of it, or 4 players get a lot out of it, right?
100%. Yeah,
that's what I think.
But it's all about mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Do I want to improve, or do I want to find the reason why am I not on court?
And then the thing is, like, you have to think about the parent. Then a parent will come to you and be like, my kid always, like, this is one of the things my kid always plays better against better players in tournaments and plays worse against worse players. This is like number one thing parents say to me.
Well,
it's like, okay, so why don't you? He needs to practice against players who are worse than him and better than him sometimes. And it's like they don't want to practice with the players who are worse than them, but then they play a tournament and they don't play well against those players. So it's like, you know,
exactly.
You have to get everything. You need the worse and better and the same.
No, 100%. Miron, we're all out of questions. I had a blast talking to you. You know, 1 hour, almost 12 minutes have passed really quick. Thank you so much for joining, with me on this episode of No Strings Attached show. I really thank you for your time. It's been very valuable.
Thanks, Bogdan. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And we got to arrange that inter-club match. We got to work on it.
Yes, we will. Yes, for sure. All right, Miron. Take care.